My name is David Carter, and I work as a park ranger in Arizona. I've spent years patrolling the trails and overseeing the safety of visitors at Grand Canyon National Park. I've encountered many wild animals and faced numerous challenges in the rugged terrain. But nothing could have prepared me for what I experienced last fall. It started with reports of strange animal sightings in the more remote areas of the park. Campers and hikers mentioned seeing large, shadowy figures that didn't quite match the descriptions of any known wildlife. Initially, I dismissed these reports as misidentifications or exaggerated tales. But as the sightings became more frequent, I decided to investigate. One evening, just before sunset, I set out on a patrol with my partner, Mike. We decided to explore one of the less traveled trails where the most recent sightings had been reported. The air was cool, and the forest was bathed in a golden light as we made our way deeper into the woods. As we walked, Mike and I chatted about the usual topics: work, family, weekend plans, but there was an underlying tension in the air. We both felt it, an unsettling sense that something was watching us. The forest was unusually quiet, and the familiar sounds of wildlife were conspicuously absent. We reached a clearing where we decided to take a break. I scanned the area with my binoculars, looking for any signs of movement. That's when I saw a tall, dark figure standing at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by the trees. I nudged Mike and pointed it out to him. He squinted, trying to make out what it was. "Could be a bear," he whispered, though he didn't sound convinced. We approached cautiously, keeping our distance. As we got closer, the figure moved, stepping out from behind the trees. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a bear, it was something much more terrifying. The creature was humanoid, but distorted, with elongated limbs and a hunched posture. Its skin was a mottled gray, and its eyes glowed with an eerie yellow light. It let out a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. "Skinwalker," Mike whispered, his voice trembling. I had heard of skinwalkers before, shape-shifting witches from Navajo legend, but I had never believed they were real. Now, standing face to face with this creature, I had no choice but to accept the horrifying reality. The skinwalker took a step toward us, and we both instinctively backed away. It moved with an unnatural grace, its eyes never leaving us. I fumbled for my radio, desperately trying to call for backup. But the creature let out a piercing scream that seemed to disrupt the signal. "We need to get out of here," Ike said, his voice urgent. We turned and ran, our hearts pounding in our chests. The skinwalker followed, its movements swift and silent. I could hear it behind us, its guttural growls growing louder. We reached a rocky outcrop and scrambled up, hoping to put some distance between us and the creature. From our vantage point, we could see the skinwalker pacing below, its yellow eyes scanning the area. It let out another scream, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. We were trapped. Mike and I exchanged a look, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "We need to fight back," he said, his voice shaking. "It's our only chance." I nodded, trying to steady my trembling hands. We grabbed some large rocks and prepared to defend ourselves. As the skinwalker approached, we hurled the rocks at it, hoping to drive it away. The creature dodged the rocks with ease, its movements almost fluid. It lunged at us, its clawed hands reaching out. I swung a rock at its head, and it let out a pained howl, staggering back. Mike and I took the opportunity to scramble down the other side of the outcrop, putting more distance between us and the creature. We ran for what felt like hours, the forest around us growing darker. The skinwalker's screams echoed through the trees, a constant reminder that it was still hunting us. We finally reached a small cave and ducked inside, hoping to find some refuge. Inside the cave, we caught our breath, listening for any signs of the creature. The silence was deafening, and I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. Mike lit a small fire, and the flickering flames cast eerie shadows on the cave walls. "We need to stay here until morning," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Skinwalkers are more active at night. If we can make it through the night, we might have a chance. We sat in silence, the fear and exhaustion weighing heavily on us. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the Skinwalker was just outside, waiting for the right moment to strike. As the hours passed, I found myself drifting in and out of sleep, my dreams filled with nightmarish visions of the creature. At some point, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside the cave. My heart raced as I nudged Mike awake. He listened for a moment, then grabbed a stick from the fire, holding it like a weapon. We crept to the entrance of the cave, peering out into the darkness. The footsteps grew louder, and we saw a figure approaching. It was a park ranger, one of our colleagues. Relief washed over me as I recognized him. "Thank God," I muttered, stepping out of the cave. "Joe, is that you?" Mike called out. The figure stopped, turning to look at us. For a moment, everything seemed normal. But then, I noticed something off. Joe's eyes were glowing yellow. "It's not him," I whispered, my voice trembling. The Skinwalker let out a guttural growl, its form shifting and contorting. It lunged at us, and we scrambled back into the cave, desperately trying to hold it off. The creature's strength was overwhelming, and I could feel it closing in on us. In a last-ditch effort, I grabbed the stick from the fire and thrust it at the creature. The flames licked at its skin, and it let out a pained howl, retreating into the darkness. We didn't wait to see if it would come back. We ran, our fear propelling us forward. We finally emerged from the forest, exhausted and shaken. Our colleagues were waiting for us, having received our earlier distress call. We recounted our encounter, and they listened in stunned silence. The experience left a lasting impact on me. I continued my work as a park ranger, but with a newfound respect for the legends and the unknown dangers that lurk in the wild. The encounter with the Skinwalker was a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of respecting the old ways. Even today, as I share my story with others, I emphasize the importance of respecting the old traditions and the power they hold. The Skinwalker may be a figure from legend, but its presence is a testament to the mysteries that still exist in our world, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to face them. The experience taught me that courage, knowledge, and respect for our heritage are the keys to overcoming the darkness that lurks in the shadows. And as long as we hold on to these values, we can face any challenge that comes our way, just as we did that fateful night in the Arizona wilderness. My name is Maria Torres, and I've lived in a small town in New Mexico my entire life. Our town, though quaint and tight-knit, sits on the edge of a vast, desolate desert. Stories of supernatural beings are part of our folklore, passed down from generation to generation. Among these tales, one stood out for its chilling details: the legend of the Skinwalker. Growing up, I never took these stories seriously. They were just spooky tales meant to keep kids from wandering too far into the desert. But that all changed one evening when I was in my early 20s. It was the summer of 2015, and I had recently moved back home after finishing college. My family owned a small ranch on the outskirts of town, and I often helped my parents with the chores. One hot, dusty evening, my parents had gone into town for supplies, leaving me alone to take care of the ranch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the desert landscape. I finished feeding the animals and decided to take a walk to clear my mind. As I strolled along the old canyon road, the air grew cooler and the sky transitioned from a brilliant orange to a deep indigo. I reached a point where the road narrowed, flanked by towering rock formations. It was a beautiful, albeit eerie place. I was lost in thought when I heard a rustling sound behind me. I turned, expecting to see a stray dog, or perhaps a coyote, but there was nothing there. I shook off the feeling of unease and continued walking. A few minutes later, I heard the rustling again, followed by a low growl. This time, my heart pounded in my chest as I turned around, my flashlight sweeping across the rocky terrain. At first, I saw nothing. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. Standing about 50 yards away was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen. It was tall and gaunt, with pale, mottled skin, and glowing yellow eyes. Its form seemed to shift and contort as it moved, making it difficult to focus on its exact shape. A chill ran down my spine as I realized what I was seeing: a skinwalker. I backed away slowly, my mind racing with fear. The creature let out another low growl, and began to advance toward me. I turned and ran, my footsteps pounding against the dusty road. The skinwalker's footsteps echoed behind me, growing louder with each passing second. I reached the ranch and slammed the door shut behind me, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I grabbed the phone and called my parents, but the line was dead. Desperation set in as I realized I was completely alone, with no way to call for help. The skinwalker was outside, circling the house. I could hear its guttural growls and the sound of its claws scraping against the walls. My mind raced, trying to remember anything I could about how to ward off a skinwalker. My grandmother had once told me that they feared certain herbs and symbols, but in my panic, I couldn't recall the specifics. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a handful of salt, throwing it at the windows and doors. I remembered hearing that salt could create a barrier against evil spirits. As I did this, I caught sight of the creature through the window. It was staring at me with those eerie yellow eyes, its form shifting and twisting in the dim light. The skinwalker let out a blood-curdling scream, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. I backed away, clutching a kitchen knife for protection. The creature continued to circle the house, its growls growing louder and more menacing. In a moment of clarity, I remembered a prayer my grandmother had taught me. It was an old Navajo chant meant to ward off evil spirits. I closed my eyes and began to recite the prayer, my voice trembling, but growing stronger with each word. As I chanted, the skinwalker's growls grew more frantic. It slammed against the walls of the house, trying to break through. But the power of the prayer seemed to hold it at bay. I continued to chant, my voice steady and determined. Finally, the creature let out one last, agonized scream and vanished into the night. The air grew still, and a profound silence settled over the ranch. I collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but relieved. My parents returned shortly after, and I recounted the terrifying encounter. They listened in stunned silence, their faces pale with fear. My father immediately took steps to protect the house, placing protective symbols and herbs around the property. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The experience had left me deeply unnerved, and I found it difficult to return to my normal routine. I sought out the wisdom of the local Navajo elders, hoping they could provide some insight and guidance. One elder, woman named Elaine, listened to my story with a grave expression. She told me that skinwalkers were powerful witches who could take the form of animals or other people. They were driven by dark magic, and often sought to harm those who crossed their path. Elena gave me a small pouch filled with sacred herbs and a turquoise amulet. "Keep these with you at all times," she said. "They will help to protect you from the skinwalkers' evil." I followed her advice, carrying the amulet and herbs wherever I went. Over time, the sense of unease began to fade, and I started to feel safe again. But the memory of that night remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked in the desert. I continued to share my story with others, hoping to raise awareness and encourage respect for the old traditions. The legend of the Skinwalker was no longer just a tale to meet, was a real and terrifying presence that I had faced and survived. The experience taught me the importance of courage, knowledge, and respect for our cultural heritage. These values were the keys to overcoming the darkness and protecting ourselves from the unknown. Even today, as I go about my daily life, I carry the lessons I learned from that night. The Skinwalker may still be out there, but I am no longer afraid. I know that I have the strength and the wisdom to face whatever challenges come my way, just as I did that fateful evening on Canyon Road. My name is Evan Daniels, and I work as a tour guide in Utah. leading adventure seekers and nature enthusiasts through some of the most breathtaking landscapes in the American Southwest. The rugged beauty of Black Rock Canyon has always been one of my favorite places to explore. It's a place of awe-inspiring rock formations, hidden caves, and ancient petroglyphs that tell the stories of the people who once lived there. But there are also stories of more sinister things lurking in the shadows. Tales of skinwalkers that have been passed down through generations. One summer, a group of college friends booked a weekend tour, eager to experience the canyon's splendor. They were a lively bunch: Jake, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, full of enthusiasm and curiosity. We set out early on a Friday morning, our backpacks loaded with supplies, ready for a 2-night camping trip in the heart of Black Rock Canyon. The first day was perfect. We hiked along scenic trails, marveling at the towering rock formations and the vibrant desert flora. By evening, we had set up camp near a small, secluded creek. We spent the night sharing stories around the campfire, the laughter and camaraderie creating a sense of warmth and security. But as the fire died down and the night grew darker, a chilling breeze swept through the canyon, and the sense of isolation became palpable. I was the last to fall asleep, staring up at the star-filled sky, my thoughts wandering to the old legends of the canyon. The idea of skinwalkers had always intrigued me, but I had never taken the story seriously. That night, however, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. The next day, we continued our exploration, visiting an ancient cliff dwelling that had been abandoned for centuries. The students were fascinated by the petroglyphs and the remnants of the past. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the canyon, we decided to head back to camp. We arrived just as dusk was settling in, and Sarah mentioned feeling a bit uneasy. "It feels like someone's been following us," she said, her voice tinged with nervous laughter. Jake dismissed her concerns with a grin. "Probably just your imagination, Sarah. This place can be a bit creepy at night." But I couldn't ignore the feeling of unease that had been growing since the previous night. As we gathered around the campfire for dinner, I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. The canyon, usually filled with the sounds of nocturnal wildlife, was eerily silent. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my tent. At first, I thought one of the students had gone for a midnight walk, but the footsteps were too heavy, too deliberate. I lay still, listening intently, my heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps circled the camp, stopping occasionally, as if whatever it was inspecting our tents. I reached for my flashlight and unzipped the tent slowly, trying not to make a sound. When I stepped outside, I saw a tall, shadowy figure standing at the edge of the camp, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was looking at a skinwalker. The stories I had heard all my life came rushing back to me, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. The creature let out a low, guttural growl, and began to move toward me. I backed away, stumbling over my own feet, and called out to the others. "Wake up! We need to get out of here!" The students scrambled out of their tents, groggy and confused. "What's going on?" Mike asked, rubbing his eyes. "There's something out there," I said, my voice trembling. "We need to leave now." The skinwalker let out a chilling scream, and the students' faces went pale. We grabbed our backpacks and started to run, not bothering to pack up the tents. The creature followed, its movements swift and unnatural, as it pursued us through the canyon. We ran for what felt like hours, our fear propelling us forward. The skinwalker's screams echoed through the canyon, a constant reminder that it was still on our trail. We finally reached a narrow ravine where we decided to take refuge. The walls of the ravine were steep and rocky, offering some protection from the creature. We huddled together, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. "What the hell was that?" Jake asked, his voice shaking. "A skinwalker," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We need to stay quiet and hope it doesn't find us." The night seemed to stretch on forever, as we sat in the darkness, listening for any signs of the creature. The canyon was deathly silent, and every rustle of the wind sent shivers down my spine. I tried to keep my fear in check, reminding myself that skinwalkers were just legends. But the reality of what we had seen was impossible to ignore. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the ravine, we cautiously emerged from our hiding place. The canyon looked serene and peaceful, a stark contrast to the terror of the night before. We made our way back to camp, our steps wary and our senses on high alert. When we reached the campsite, we found our tents shredded and our supplies scattered. The sight sent a fresh wave of fear through me. The Skinwalker had clearly been here, searching for us. "We need to leave," I said, my voice firm. "It's not safe here." We packed up what little we could salvage and began the trek back to the trailhead. The journey was long and grueling, but we were driven by a sense of urgency and the need to put as much distance between ourselves and the canyon as possible. When we finally reached the trailhead, we were exhausted, but relieved to be out of the canyon. We reported the encounter to the authorities, but they were skeptical. The official explanation was that we had encountered a wild animal, but we knew better. The experience left a lasting mark on all of us. The students returned to their lives, but they never forgot what they had seen. As for me, I continued my work as a tour guide, but I approached the canyon with a newfound respect and caution. The legend of the Skinwalker was no longer just a story to me. It was a reminder of the mysteries and dangers that still exist in our world, hidden in the shadows and waiting to be discovered by those brave enough or unlucky enough to encounter them. To this day, I share my story with others, hoping to raise awareness and encourage respect for the old traditions and the unknown forces that inhabit the wild places of our world. The experience taught me the importance of vigilance, respect, and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most terrifying challenges. The Skinwalker may still haunt the depths of Black Rock Canyon, but I know that I have the strength and wisdom to face whatever comes my way. And as long as I carry that knowledge with me, I am prepared for whatever the future holds. My name is Leah Foster, and I've always been drawn to the wilderness. As a park ranger in Arizona, my job is to protect the natural beauty of the land and ensure the safety of those who come to explore it. But no amount of training could have prepared me for the night I encountered the Skinwalkers of Shadow Creek. It was late fall, and the days were growing shorter. The air had a crisp bite to it, and the leaves had turned vibrant shades of red and gold. I was assigned to patrol a remote area of the park that hadn't seen much activity in years. Shadow Creek was known for its dense forests and winding trails, a place of serene beauty that felt untouched by time. That day, I received a call about a group of campers who had gone missing near Shadow Creek. They were experienced hikers, well prepared for the trip, which made their sudden disappearance all the more alarming. I set out immediately, determined to find them before nightfall. The sun was beginning to set as I reached the trailhead. I checked my GUR flashlight, radio, first aid kit and set off along the path. The forest was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of wildlife conspicuously absent. As I ventured deeper into the woods, a sense of unease settled over me. I followed the trail for several miles until I came across a campsite. The tents were still there, but the place was in disarray. Backpacks were strewn about, and the remnants of a campfire smoldered in the center. It looked like the campers had left in a hurry. I called out, hoping for a response, but the forest remained silent. I began to search the area, looking for any signs of what might have happened. As I sifted through their belongings, I found a journal. The last entry was chilling. "We saw something in the woods tonight. It's not an animal. I don't know what it is, but we need to leave." My heart raced as I read the words. I knew the stories about Skinwalker shape-shifting witches who could take on the form of animals or people. They were said to be able to control the weather, possess supernatural strength, and move with incredible speed. But I had always considered them to be just that, stories. I decided to follow the trail leading away from the campsite, hoping to find the campers before it was too late. The path wound through dense thickets and over rocky terrain. As night fell, the forest took on a more sinister feel. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and every rustle of leaves set my nerves on edge. I was about a mile from the campsite when I heard it, a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. I stopped in my tracks, my flashlight sweeping through the trees. At first, I saw nothing. Then, just beyond the beam of light, I caught a glimpse of a figure. It was tall and gaunt, with glowing red eyes that pierced the darkness. Its form seemed to shift and waver, as if it couldn't decide what shape to take. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was looking at a skinwalker. I backed away slowly, trying not to make any sudden movements. The creature let out another growl, this one louder and more menacing. I turned and ran, my flashlight bouncing wildly in the darkness. The skinwalker gave chase, its footsteps echoing through the forest. I could hear it gaining on me, its growls growing closer. Panic surged through me as I ran faster, my lungs burning with the effort. I knew I couldn't outrun it, so I needed to find a place to hide. I spotted a large fallen tree and dove behind it, pressing myself against the ground. The skinwalker stopped, its glowing eyes scanning the area. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find me. After what felt like an eternity, it let out a frustrated growl and moved on, disappearing into the darkness. I waited several minutes before emerging from my hiding place, my heart still pounding in my chest. I needed to find the campers and get out of the forest. I continued along the trail, moving as quietly as possible. About half a mile later, I found them. They were huddled together in a small clearing, their faces pale with fear. "Leah," one of them cried out when they saw me. "Thank God you're here. We need to get out of here," I said, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped me. "Now, we made our way back along the trail, sticking close together. The campers told me about the creature they had seen, how it had chased them through the forest. They had managed to lose it, but they were too afraid to move any further. As we neared the campsite, we heard the growl again. The skinwalker had found us. We broke into a run, the creature hot on our heels. We could see the lights of the campsite ahead, but the skinwalker was closing in. Just as we reached the edge of the clearing, the skinwalker lunged at us. I turned and fired a shot from my service weapon, the sound echoing through the forest. The creature let out a scream and fell back, giving us just enough time to reach the tents. We barricaded ourselves inside one of the tents, hoping it would be enough to keep the skinwalker out. The creature circled the tent, its growls sending shivers down our spines. It scratched at the fabric, trying to tear its way in. I reached for my radio and called for backup, my voice trembling. "This is Ranger Foster. We need immediate assistance at Shadow Creek. There's something out here. We need help." The response was quick. "Hang tight, Leah. We're sending a team your way. Hold on." The next few minutes felt like hours as we waited for help to arrive. The skinwalker continued its assault on the tent, but the fabric held. Finally, we heard the sound of approaching vehicles and the voices of fellow rangers. The skinwalker let out one last, furious scream before disappearing into the night. The rangers helped us out of the tent and escorted us back to the trailhead. We were shaken, but unharmed. The incident was reported, but the official explanation was vague. They said we had likely encountered a wild animal, but I knew the truth. The skinwalker was real, and it was out there, lurking in the shadows of Shadow Creek. I returned to my duties, but I was never the same. The experience had changed me, made me more cautious and aware of the dangers that could be lurking in the wilderness. I shared my story with others, hoping to raise awareness and encourage respect for the old legends. The skinwalker may still be out there, but I know that I am prepared to face whatever challenges come my way. The wilderness is a place of beauty and danger, and it demands respect. And as long as I carry that respect with me, I am ready for whatever the future holds.